I stared at the text message for a full minute before I even blinked. "You're not invited to dinner. I don't want you here." That was it. No hello, no explanation, just a plain cold message from my daughter-in-law sent at 4:17 p.m. the same day I was supposed to arrive. I had paid for that dinner. I had covered the down payment on their house, paid the hospital bills when their baby was born, covered their honeymoon, their groceries, and even their Wi-Fi for the past 4 years. And now I wasn't wanted. I texted back one word. Okay. Then I opened my receipts folder. Every transaction, $120 for a baby stroller, $5,000 for their wedding DJ, $2,500 for the deposit on their new home was right there. I had logged everything, every gift, every support payment, all 150 receipts. I didn't scream, I didn't call, I didn't confront. I deleted every single one quietly, calmly, and then I went completely silent. No more bank alerts, no more calls, no more help. They had no idea what was coming. Before I dive in, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps more people hear stories like this. But the real twist? It all started 3 months earlier with a different dinner table and a whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. It was a warm Friday evening. I had driven across town to drop off a care package, homemade soup, a few frozen meals, and some diapers. Emily, my daughter-in-law, answered the door with her phone pressed to her ear. "Yeah, she's here again," she muttered, clearly not realizing the Bluetooth speaker had picked up her voice loud and clear. "I swear she just invites herself over." My heart tightened. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't hiding it. She knew I could hear her. When she turned back, her smile was fake, thin. "Oh, hi, Maria. That's so kind of you again." I gave her the bag, nodded silently, and turned back toward my car. That was the first time I considered pulling back, but I didn't, not yet. My son David had always been gentle. He used to call me every weekend, ask for advice, bring flowers just because. But ever since Emily came into the picture, those moments faded slowly, quietly, like someone turning down the volume on a familiar song. The next week, I sent a payment for their car insurance, no reply. The next month, I offered to babysit so they could have a night out. They said they already had plans with Emily's mother. And now this dinner that was supposed to be a thank you for everything I'd done, a little celebration of the home they had just moved into because of me. I had offered to host, bought groceries, arranged catering, even picked out table settings. I thought I was part of the family. Turns out, I was just the checkbook. The day before the dinner, I texted David to confirm the time, no response. I called, voicemail. Then, at 4:17 p.m. the next day, I got the message. "You're not invited to dinner. I don't want you here," sent from Emily's number, not David's. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel anger yet. What I felt was a deep sense of betrayal. Inside me, a silence told me I had let this go too far. I had kept giving because I was scared to stop, scared to be forgotten, scared to be alone. But this wasn't love. This was dependency, and it was time to end it. I sat down with my receipts, all 150 of them. $67 for maternity vitamins, $400 for their couch, $99.99 for a new mom spa day. I clicked and deleted, like slicing ties one by one. Then I logged into my bank account, paused the automatic rent top-up I had been sending them, canceled the upcoming mortgage contribution, and changed the passwords to all the shared family services: Netflix, Hulu, even Amazon. I didn't announce it. I didn't warn them. I just vanished from the support system they'd grown too comfortable leaning on. 2 days passed, then the text started. "Hey Maria, did something happen with the rent?" "Mom, Netflix is not working. Did you change something? Can you check the grocery card? It's declined." I said nothing. Silence is sometimes the loudest reply. On day 4, I got a call from David. I let it ring out, then another and another, 66 missed calls in total by the end of the week. But still no apology, just panic. That's when I knew they didn't miss me. They missed my wallet. I wasn't done yet. The receipts may have been deleted, but I had backed them up, and now I was drafting a formal legal letter itemizing every payment as a temporary loan, subject to recovery if not repaid or acknowledged as a gift in writing. It was dramatic, yes, but it wasn't revenge. It was respect, and I was done letting them treat me like a doormat. What happened next? Let's just say dinner wasn't the only thing Emily would regret canceling. After a full week of silence from my side, I finally got a message from David, not Emily, not a shared number, not a family group chat, just him alone. Mom, please talk to me. What's going on? Emily says you're mad because of a misunderstanding. She didn't mean what she said like that. A misunderstanding? The words echoed in my head like an insult wrapped in denial. I reread the text she sent me. You're not invited to dinner. I don't want you here. How much clearer could it be? Was I supposed to interpret that as an open invitation? Still, part of me softened. This was my son, my baby boy, who used to run to me after school, who clung to my apron when he had nightmares, who once said, "When I grow up, I want to take care of you the way you take care of me." But that little boy was gone, and this grown man had stood by while his wife sent that text. He didn't stop her. He didn't defend me. He didn't even check in until the money stopped. I typed back one word. Why? He replied instantly. Why? What? I stared at the screen. The fact that he didn't even understand the question said everything. Why didn't you stop her? Why didn't you say anything when she disrespected me? There was no reply for 6 hours. That night, I opened the box I kept at the top of my wardrobe. Inside were drawings David made when he was little. Cards with crooked hearts, a photograph of us in front of the community center the day he graduated college. My face beamed in that picture. His arms were wrapped around me like I was his whole world. Where had that gone? Maybe I had lost him the day I made him too comfortable. 3 days later, I was walking through the grocery store when I heard someone call my name. Maria? I turned around. It was Cynthia, one of the other moms from David's old school days. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but her smile was warm and real. I just saw Emily at the farmer's market, she said. She looked well, stressed. She said you'd had a falling out. I didn't answer directly. I just smiled. Sometimes you just have to let people go when they show you who they really are. Cynthia tilted her head. I always thought she was a bit sharp, but I figured David would handle it, stand up for you if anything ever happened. That made me laugh, not the funny kind, the bitter, ironic kind that tastes like burnt coffee. I thought so too, I said. She gave me a look, sympathetic and gentle, but didn't press. We stood there for a moment longer before she said, "You deserve better." Those words stayed with me all the way home, through the night. The next morning, I received a long message from Emily. Maria, I'm sorry if what I said came off harsh. It's just that we're trying to set boundaries now that we're settling into the house. You've done a lot for us, and we appreciate it, but we also need space to build our family without interference. That word hit me like a slap. Space was never the problem. It was their entitlement that was the issue. They took what they wanted, my time, my savings, my generosity, and then turned around and labeled me a burden. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my financial software and printed out a statement of every single major expense I had paid on their behalf for the past 5 years. It spanned 6 pages. I placed it in a red folder, just like the one I used to keep our family bills in back when David was young. Then I drafted a letter to David and Emily. Over the last few years, I have supported you both financially out of love and the hope that we would remain a family. I never asked for repayment. I never expected reimbursement. But what I did expect, perhaps foolishly, was basic respect. That was taken from me the moment I received Emily's text. You are adults, you have your own home, your own child, your own lives. This is me stepping back. Attached are records of everything I've contributed. Consider it a ledger of lessons, not in money, but in how quickly love can be discarded when taken for granted. I wish you peace, but I will no longer fund my own disrespect. I hand-delivered it quietly, no confrontation, just placed the red folder in their mailbox and left. By the time I reached home, I had 11 missed calls. By midnight, 66. But I didn't pick up. I was sipping tea on my balcony, the city lights flickering far below, a silence hanging in the air that felt more peaceful than any noise. It was the first time in years I felt free. A week passed, then two. I didn't go to their house, I didn't check on their groceries, I didn't ask if they needed help with the baby, and yet life didn't fall apart. In fact, it got better. I started going to art class again, took a trip with some friends from church, and signed up for a writing workshop. Things I had put off for later had finally come. I also started seeing more of my niece Clara. She was in college nearby and would visit me on weekends. We'd cook together, talk for hours, and laugh over silly shows. "You're glowing, Aunt Maria," she said one day as we baked cinnamon rolls. "Seriously, whatever you've done, keep doing it." I smiled. I stopped pretending I was welcome where I was merely tolerated. Then came the dinner, the one they said I wasn't invited to. It was David's birthday. They had planned a big celebration, friends, neighbors, a few coworkers, but not me, or so they thought. I got a message from one of David's oldest friends, Marcus. He had seen the invitation list, noticed I was missing, and called me to ask why. I told him the truth. He paused. "That's not okay," he said. "You've done more for him than anyone I know." Apparently, word got around because halfway through the party, while the guests were laughing in the backyard, a woman stood up and asked David, "Is your mom coming later?" Emily tensed. David shifted uncomfortably. "She couldn't make it." Marcus, standing nearby, spoke up. "No, she wasn't invited." The laughter stopped, and then came the ripple. Guest after guest started murmuring. A few even walked out. One woman returned a gift she had brought. Another said, "You don't exclude your own mother. That's just wrong." By the end of the night, only a handful of guests remained. The rest had quietly excused themselves. David tried calling me again that night. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. His voice was tight, strained. "Mom, I don't know what's happening. People are turning on us. Emily's crying. Can we just talk, please?" I replayed the message once, then again, then deleted it. A few days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox, handwritten from David.
"Mom, I'm sorry.
You didn't deserve any of this. I don't know when I stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as just help. I think I was too afraid to disappoint Emily, and I let her say and do things I should have stood up against. I understand if you can't forgive me. I really do. But I want to try again. Not with money, not with gifts, just with me, your son, if there's still a chance." I read it. I sat with it for days. Forgiveness isn't easy, especially when trust has been cracked. But maybe the point isn't to forget what happened. Maybe it's to remember what I learned. I placed David's letter on the table beside me. It sat there for days like a question I wasn't ready to answer. There was no denying the sadness in his words or the guilt, but I also knew how apologies worked in that household. Emily would say something cruel, David would excuse it as stress, and I'd follow. I gave it because I loved him. Then the cycle would start again, but this time something felt different. He hadn't called. He hadn't texted. He had written by hand. That was the boy I remembered, the one who scribbled "I love you, Mom" on birthday cards with dinosaur stickers and misspelled words. The one who never let a single Mother's Day pass without pancakes, even if they were burnt and lopsided. I missed that boy, but I didn't know the man he had become. I needed time, so I didn't respond. Instead, I walked to the community center that Saturday, the same one where David used to have art lessons, and signed up for a pottery class. My hands had grown stiff over the years, used more for paying bills and washing dishes than for anything creative. But as I shaped the soft clay between my palms, something inside me softened too. The silence that once felt painful now felt like peace until one morning it shattered. It started with a knock on the door. When I opened it, there stood David with the baby in his arms.
No, Emily.
His eyes were bloodshot. His hair was messy. He looked exhausted. "Mom," he said softly. I didn't know where else to go. My heart wanted to melt, but my guard stayed up. I looked at the baby, little Clara, named after my mother. Her cheeks were red, her curls wild and unbrushed. She reached out for me with tiny fingers. I stepped aside and let them in. David sat on the couch like he used to as a teenager, shoulders hunched, eyes down, waiting for me to speak first. But I didn't. He finally broke the silence. "She left." I blinked. Emily. He nodded. Packed a suitcase last night and walked out. Said she was going to stay with her sister for a while. Said I needed to figure out who I was loyal to. I sat down across from him. And are you? He looked up. I don't know. I thought I was, but the more I tried to keep peace with her, the more I lost pieces of myself and of you. I didn't say anything, not yet. He ran his hand through his hair. Mom, I know I let things go too far. I know I let her disrespect you, and I stood by. But I also know you've always been the only person who truly had my back, and I miss you. There it was again, that little boy in a grown man's body. I looked at him closely. David, this isn't just about Emily. It's about you. You let it happen. You let me become invisible in your life. He nodded. I know. And now that she's gone, you remember me? His eyes filled with tears. That hurts, I whispered. He looked down again. I don't blame you. The baby started fussing. I reached out instinctively, and he handed her to me. She settled into my arms like she belonged there, like nothing had changed. I rocked her gently, thinking, maybe it wasn't about punishing him anymore. Maybe it was about teaching him and letting him earn his way back. That evening, I made a simple dinner. Vegetable soup, fresh bread, and apple crumble. David sat quietly at the table, feeding Clara tiny spoonfuls of mashed peas. There was no music, no TV, just the soft clinking of dishes and the warmth of a shared meal. Halfway through, he said, "Do you remember that camping trip we took when I was 10? You packed hot chocolate in a thermos, but I dropped it in the river." I laughed. You cried for hours. You sat with me on the log and said, "Some things aren't meant to stay, but that doesn't mean we can't enjoy the moment." I had forgotten that line, but he hadn't. That night, after he left with the baby asleep in her carrier, I stood by the window and stared at the moon. Could things really change, or was this just another cycle? I didn't know yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going back to the woman who quietly paid and accepted disrespect. This new version of me had learned boundaries, and boundaries don't bend just because someone remembers how to say sorry. The next morning, I got a text from Emily. "David's been staying with you. Good luck. Let's see how long you enjoy that." No greeting, no question about the baby, just venom. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't upset because David had left. She was upset because I wasn't begging to be let back in. She had lost control of the narrative. I wasn't the desperate mother-in-law anymore. I was the one who stopped responding, who set the limit, who disappeared. And now, for the first time, she was the one on the outside. I didn't reply, but I took a screenshot. 3 days later, David returned with flowers. "Not for forgiveness," he said, "just gratitude." I smiled and took the flowers. We didn't talk about the past. We talked about the baby's favorite toys, about how she refused to nap unless someone hummed a lullaby, about how tired he was, but how much he loved her smile. It was a small start, but it was honest, and sometimes honesty is all you need to begin again.
But the real twist came later that week.
David showed up again, this time with a small box. He placed it on the kitchen table and slid it toward me. "What's this?" I asked. "Just something I found when Emily left." I opened the box. Inside were copies of text messages, printed screenshots, emails, messages from Emily's sister, from her friend, from Emily herself. Things like, "I can't stand that woman. She acts like we owe her something. If Maria thinks we'll let her control our lives just because she paid a few bills, she's dumber than she looks. Once the house is paid off, we won't need her anymore anyway." My breath caught in my throat. I looked at David. He nodded, eyes heavy. "I had no idea," he whispered. "I saw them while packing some of her things." She forgot to log out of her email. I closed the box. The pain was sharp but clarifying. This wasn't about one dinner. It never was. This was a long, slow eraser, and I had finally stopped it. David stood up to leave. "Mom," he said, pausing at the door, "I know I have a long way to go, but I'm here now and I'm staying." I believed him, but belief and trust are different. Trust takes time, and this time I wouldn't give it away freely. He had to earn it, just like I had earned my peace. It had been 3 weeks since David first walked back into my home with Clara in his arms. 3 weeks since the silence between us was broken, not by money, not by guilt, but by the quiet sound of remorse. Every day since then, he came by, sometimes just to sit and talk, sometimes to drop off the baby while he ran errands. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't expect anything. Still, I didn't let my guard down completely because I remembered everything too clearly. The nights I'd stay up worrying about them, the months I quietly picked up the slack while they complained about how tight things were, yet still managed spa days and luxury strollers, the Christmas they gifted me a scented candle while I paid their mortgage, the dinner I wasn't welcome to even though the tablecloth had come from my wallet. It was easy to fall back into softness, especially with the baby's laughter echoing in my hallway. But I reminded myself forgiveness is not the same as forgetting, and I wasn't going to forget. One Wednesday morning, David showed up looking nervous. "Can we talk?" he asked. We sat at the table. I poured us tea. He fiddled with the edge of the coaster. "I need your advice," he finally said. "There's a hearing." My eyebrows lifted. "A hearing?" He nodded. "Emily filed for partial custody. She wants weekends, but she also wants control of the joint account, the house, and full say over school choices." "Wait," I said, setting down my cup. "She walked out on you and Clara, and now she wants to control everything again?" He swallowed hard. "I think she's trying to rattle me, and, to be honest, it's working." I sat back, stunned but not surprised. Emily had always been sharp, but I had underestimated how calculated she could be. And yet, some part of me whispered, "She thinks she's still in control." "Do you have a lawyer?" I asked. He shook his head. "I don't know if I can afford one." That's when I stood up, walked to my filing cabinet, and pulled out a card. "Call this woman," I said, handing it to him. "Family attorney. She's sharp, fair, and not afraid of people like Emily." He took the card slowly, like it was something sacred. "Are you sure?" "I'm not paying for the case," I said, "but I'll help you find the right tools." David looked at me, and for once, there was no expectation in his eyes, just gratitude.
"Thank you," he said.
"I'll handle the rest." The court hearing was scheduled 3 weeks later. David kept me updated, but I stayed back. I didn't want to be a shadow in the room. I had already lived enough of this drama in silence. But on the morning of the hearing, something unexpected happened. Emily showed up at my door, dressed in beige heels, a slim black dress, hair perfectly pinned, makeup flawless, but her eyes were wild, like a storm barely hidden beneath a painted sky. I didn't invite her in. She didn't ask. She stood on the porch like she owned it. "I just want to clear the air," she began, tone sharp but sugar-coated. "David's been confused lately. I think you've had more influence than is healthy." I blinked slowly. "You came to my house to blame me for David not choosing you?" She shifted. "I just want what's best for David and the baby." "And is what's best for Clara removing her grandmother from her life and texting her father's mother that she's not welcome at the dinner table?" She clenched her jaw. That message was taken out of context. "No," I said, voice calm. It was delivered in full context. Rudeness doesn't need translation. She paused, then smiled bitterly. "You think you've won something, that you've taken him back? You're just his backup, a stopgap." I tilted my head. "And yet I'm the one feeding her, rocking her to sleep, paying attention." Emily stepped closer. "You don't belong in his marriage." "I never did," I said, "but now I don't belong in his chaos either." She narrowed her eyes. "You've made a mistake crossing me." And then, like she hadn't just threatened me, she turned and walked back to her car. That night, I wrote everything down. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it for clarity. Because when you start doubting yourself, written truth is your best reminder. Every moment of cruelty, every receipt paid, every voicemail ignored. I kept it in a folder labeled simply memory, not revenge. And then I put it away, because I didn't want to live in that pain anymore. The next day, David won joint custody. The judge ruled against Emily's financial demands, especially since she'd left voluntarily, but she was granted weekend visitation rights, pending a follow-up evaluation. David came over that evening with tears in his eyes. "She tried to twist everything," he said, voice cracking. "But I stayed calm. I told the truth. I told them you were the only constant in Clarara's life when she needed it." He paused. "And I told them I'm learning how to be the father I want to be." I nodded, swallowing my emotion. "You're doing okay," I said. He laughed lightly. "That's the highest praise I've had in months." In the following weeks, things began to shift, not just with David but with me. I started walking again every morning. Real walks, not rushed grocery errands or baby strolls. Just me, the sunrise, and the sound of my own breath. I joined a local reading club, started hosting weekend lunches with old friends, laughed more, worried less. One Friday afternoon, while Clara napped in the next room, David brought out an envelope. "I want to show you something." Inside was a repayment plan he had created himself. Every major expense I had helped with, itemized, estimated, divided over 60 months. "I can't promise I'll be perfect," he said, "but I want to try. I need to feel like I earned my way back." I looked at the numbers. I wasn't interested in the money, but I was deeply moved by the gesture. He was trying to make things right, not just with words, but with accountability. "You don't have to do this," I said softly. "But I want to," he replied. That weekend, Emily didn't show up for her scheduled visit. David waited for an hour, no call, no explanation. The next week, she arrived late and barely interacted with Clara. The third weekend, she canceled again, claiming she had a work trip. David started documenting everything. "I don't want her erased," he said. "I just want Clara to be safe." I nodded, then kept showing up. "That's all that matters now." One night, while tucking Clara into bed, she whispered, "Grandma, sing the song." I smiled and started humming the same lullaby I used to sing to David. Her tiny eyes fluttered shut, and in that moment, I realized something important. This story wasn't about loss. It was about legacy. It was about the strength to draw a line in the sand and the patience to see who would cross it with grace. It was about how a woman who'd been pushed aside quietly took back her power, not with rage, but with dignity. And most of all, it was about showing the next generation what love truly looks like: firm, gentle, honest, and earned. It was a Sunday afternoon, cool and cloudy, the kind of day that makes you want to stay wrapped in a soft blanket with a cup of tea and something warm in the oven. I had just finished folding Clarara's little clothes, tiny socks that never seemed to match, her favorite overalls with the sunflower patch, when I heard the knock. This time, I knew who it would be before I opened the door: Emily. But she looked different, not in her usual crisp, flawless way. Her hair was pulled back messily, dark circles under her eyes, and her lips pressed tight like she was forcing herself to be calm. She wasn't holding a baby. She wasn't holding a gift, just herself. And that's when I knew she didn't come to threaten me. She came because she had nowhere else to go. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded once. On the porch, we sat quiet, just the soft sound of wind brushing the leaves and the occasional chirp from a passing bird. She stared at her hands for a long time. "I made a mistake," she finally said. I waited. "I thought cutting you off would give me more control. I thought David would respect me more if I distanced him from you, but I didn't realize how much I was cutting away the only good things we had left." She glanced at me, her eyes shimmered. "You took care of us. You never asked for anything back, and I treated you like you were a threat, not a blessing." I watched her face. She wasn't performing this time. There was no smirk, no fake apology, just raw truth. "I hurt you," she whispered, "and I don't know if I even deserve forgiveness, but I needed to say it anyway." I took a deep breath. "You did hurt me," I said slowly, "and not just once. You took the hands that held you up and tried to pretend they were the ones weighing you down." She nodded, wiping her cheek. "But I'm not angry anymore," I continued, "because I've learned something." She looked at me, waiting. "I'm not anyone's extra, not anyone's afterthought. I'm not just David's mother or Clarara's grandmother or the person who makes things easier. I'm someone who finally knows her own worth." Emily looked away. "I was afraid of that," she said softly. "Good," I replied, Because maybe now you'll think twice before hurting people who only wanted to help you. She didn't speak again. She just stood, nodded, and walked away. I watched her. I go not out of resentment, but out of closure. That was the last conversation we ever had. 6 months later, the world looked entirely different. David had moved into a modest apartment close to me. Nothing flashy, nothing showy, just enough. He took a new job, nothing huge, but something stable, something honest. We started a tradition. Every Friday night, he brought Clara over for dinner. She'd run in with her little backpack, shouting "Grandma," and throw her arms around my legs. We'd cook, eat, talk. No drama, no tension, just family. Emily had moved out of state. She still had visitation, but she rarely used it. Once a month, a video call. Sometimes she sent a box of toys. But David stopped chasing her approval. He focused on the daughter who needed him and the mother who never stopped being there. On Clara's birthday, we threw a picnic in the park. Nothing fancy, just homemade food, laughter, a few close friends, and a purple cake with her name written in crooked icing. When it came time for gifts, she ran straight to the smallest box. Inside was a drawing of her, David, and me, all holding hands beneath a big yellow sun. She had scribbled our names in shaky letters. She looked up at me and said, "I drew us together always." I smiled and kissed her forehead. "That's perfect." David stood beside me, watching his daughter with soft eyes. "You know," he said, "I used to think I had to choose between being a son and being a husband, but I realize now I just had to learn how to be a man." I looked at him and said, "You are now." He nodded, "Because you showed me how." That night, after the last guest had left and the cake crumbs had been swept away, I sat by the window with a warm cup of tea. Clara was asleep in the next room. David had gone home for the night, but promised to be back early for breakfast. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full in all the right ways, full of love that had been tested but stood firm, full of silence that no longer meant pain but peace, full of lessons that took a lifetime to learn and a single moment to finally accept. They tried to push me aside. They thought I'd disappear, but all I did was step back and wait for the ones who truly valued me to find their way home. And they did.